Welcome to the channel, guys. My name is Jess. So it has been an absolutely crazy last 48 hours of price action for Bitcoin. We are back above $100,000, but will it sustain? Let's dive into the charts today and talk about all the recent price action, including why it's so important and everything that you need to watch out for to either confirm that the bullish narrative is still intact or that Bitcoin is about to flip the script. As always, before we dive in, make sure you guys smash that like button and subscribe to the channel to get regular Bitcoin analysis every Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. And sign up to my free Telegram for more regular Bitcoin updates. If you're a trader and you're interested in my VIP channel, be sure to message me down below on Telegram. VIP gives you exclusive access to my personal trading setups with exact entry points, targets, and stop losses. Alrighty guys, so diving into the charts, let's talk about all the recent price action before we dive into our analysis. So off the bat, we can see it's been a really bullish, particularly last 24 hours. And we've had a lot of news come out in the last couple of days as well. So first of all, we had FOMC, the federal interest rate meeting, and the interest rate decision. I feel like most of you guys will probably already know the results of that. I posted it in my Telegram, so if you aren't following along on Telegram, make sure to do that. You get a lot more sort of updates around these important periods of time. But the rate decision was stagnant. We sat steady at 4.25 to 4.5%, and at the interest rate meeting they sort of just reiterated what we already know. So it was overall very neutral. The market had already priced in a rate stagnation or no cuts, and so there was really no change moving into and after FOMC. We can see, just taking a look at the price action, as we approached FOMC, we're seeing a massive risk-off sort of approach. The market sort of topped out a little at $97,000, and we were just strictly consolidating above this level of support here at $94,000 or $93,500. And we were even starting to, as we lost momentum, consolidate in a bearish structure, this broadening descending wedge, where in breaking down, we would have very likely seen a move to retest $88,700, which was also the exact measured move of our wedge pattern as well. But despite FOMC and how it was really neutral and the market was losing momentum, we ended up rallying really aggressively over the last 24 hours. And most of that price action can be attributed to the Trump announcement that came out, I think it was late last night / early this morning for those of us in Australia. And it was a trade deal between the US and the UK. And that's sort of bullish for the market, because if we have, these sort of trade deals and it decreases inflationary pressure on the US, we're more likely to move towards that Fed interest rate goal of 2%, Fed inflation goal of 2%, and we're more likely to get an interest rate cut, right? And all of that eases the cost of debt and sort of supports the investment into risk assets and supports, the market going up. So naturally, the price has rallied a lot as a result of that news, and Bitcoin has gone all the way up to $104,000. Now, the real question is, or the big question is, after all of this rallying and after all the crazy price action that we've seen, and after the news has already come out, right? We're not waiting for news anymore. The market's not preemptively rallying because of Trump's little breadcrumb hints. Is this rally going to sustain? Are we going to hold above $100,000 or even $102,000? And if not, where could the price action go? And to what extent is it going to become concerning? Are we going to see Bitcoin flip the script or flip the narrative back to being potentially bearish, even on the short term, or potentially even the high time frame? So starting off our analysis on the high time frame charts, let's talk about the significance of $100,000 in the recent rally. So moving into FOMC, if we take a look at the weekly time frame, Bitcoin essentially had two potential scenarios. We had one where, in breaking down from the broadening ascending wedge, we would see a retracement, right? And that retracement on the weekly time frame as well would have taken Bitcoin very likely below the base of this current weekly range that we had just started to travel within. And if we take a look at the most recent weekly candle close, we can see that the buyers were really struggling to absorb the selling pressure that existed within this range, right? Really struggling to push upwards beyond this sort of 94, 95K region and, see the developments that we were looking for into 100,000 and the weekly range high at $104,000, right? So that was one of the scenarios. And that retracement would have very likely taken Bitcoin back down to 88.7 and potentially even, retracement to the prior weekly range. So that was option number one. And then the second option was for Bitcoin to maintain its travel within the current weekly range and continue to validate the base of this range as support. And that is exactly what we saw. So even though FOMC did not end up being bullish and the market didn't sort of rally afterwards, or, it wasn't interpreted particularly bullishly, Trump's news had that effect, right? And so it's had really high time frame sort of implications because we've continued to validate the high time frame bullish narrative. And I kind of want to stress that before we dive into short time frame and talk about potential corrections that we see here as Bitcoin approaches resistance, because we are sitting at resistance. We've just tapped the weekly range high, right? And that's going to be a massive, massive wall of resistance right there. But if we take a look at BLX, for example, simply going off date range trends and how the price action has developed, we've tapped the 50 EMA on the weekly time frame here. We've tapped the Gaussian channel, both validating high time frame bullish continuations. That happened very recently in the last couple of weeks. And as per date range trends, Bitcoin should continue to travel in a high time frame bullish trajectory for at least another 145 to 150 days, right? Until 29th of September, which, in terms of traditional cycles, 4-year cycles, that is generally where we would have or should see the top, right? I don't know if that's actually going to happen because Trump is kind of quite motivated, I feel like, in not letting the market do what it wants to do, and potentially we won't see a top at 29,000 on the 29th of September. And we've seen a lot of things in the last year that really sort of go against traditional cycle, like the dead cat bounce breakthrough that happened very, very early. New all-time high happened very, very early. We've had massive institutional adoption. Again, like I said, Donald Trump is very, very motivated, and this is a very sentiment-driven market. So, he has more power in that regard in terms of changing the trajectory and changing what the market's going to do. But just based off that fact, Bitcoin has, quite a high time frame bullish period ahead. Even though that's, still on the cards and that narrative is definitely intact, there is still a high potential here that Bitcoin sees a little bit of a correction from $104,000. So as I've said, if we take a look at the weekly time frame, Bitcoin has just moments ago tested the weekly range high, right? So what that means is the price for the weekly candle has never been higher than this in the history of Bitcoin. And that's at $104.4 thousand, right? So that is a massive sell wall. There's going to be lots of people looking to take profit at that level, right? And, of course, as the weekly range high, it's going to serve as a psychological level for selling as well. And already we can see a little bit of rejection from that. The candle close is sort of moving away from that range at $104,000. And if we take a look at the daily time frame, we can see that resistance very, very clearly as well. So that's mapped out both, very easily on the charts using this sort of candle over here. But also if you want to pull up the Smart Money Concepts indicator, that maps it out as well, right? So we have resistance starting at $103.3 thousand and moving all the way up to 106.3. That is the next liquidity zone of resistance. And then above that, we have a week high, or the all-time high, at $109.9 thousand, or nearly $110,000. And of course, beyond that would be price discovery. So clearly, Bitcoin's approaching really, really crucial areas in the price action right now, and we are sitting at resistance. So there is a strong potential, like I said, that we see a correction over here, and where the correction could go that would still retain most of Bitcoin's bullish narrative is this green line over here at $100,000. And the reason why that is so important is if we take a look at the historical reactions to $100,000, we can see that generally if Bitcoin pushes above 100K and we retain that level as a base of support on a retest, right? So we can see that in both of these instances. This one we retested and bounced, and this one we also retested and bounced. We're talking about the daily candle closes here. Both times, Bitcoin went on to surpass $100,000 and create new all-time highs. So we had the all-time high created over here at 108,000. That's also where we closed the weekly range high. And we had a candle movement all the way up to $110,000 upon that bounce on support. And that created the new all-time high overall, right? So what we're looking for this time is in this rejection from $105,000, $103,000 support, this liquidity zone, in the sell wall, we want to see Bitcoin maintain travel above $100,000. If we tap that level, we want to see a bounce. And on the weekly chart, as we retest those levels of resistance on the daily time frame and move into this liquidity zone after bouncing on 100K support, what we want to see here is for the RSI to cross above 68.19 on the oscillator. And the reason for that is because we want to see that this retest of the weekly range high resistance on these high time frame charts has more bullish momentum than we did over here, right? When Bitcoin created bearish divergence despite tapping $110,000, and we ended up falling into a high time frame period of consolidation and tapping 74K, right? So we don't want to see that. We want to see that bullish momentum is actually going up, we're rising momentum, and that signals that this weekly candle close, upon that rally, has a higher potential to actually close above $104,000, establishing a new weekly high and, further validating high time frame bullish price action on both the short term and the high time frame. Moving over to the short time frame charts, let's talk about the potential pullback for Bitcoin on the short time frame and what's really going to signal that that is happening. So zooming into the hourly chart, we can see here that we have a short time frame uptrend, right? That's sort of mapping out the really aggressive rallying that Bitcoin's done moving into the UK trade deal with Trump, or that news, and the same sort of uptrend that has taken us to retest this level of resistance. So off the bat, if we break down from that trend line, we've seen a structural loss of support. That's going to signal that the price action is very likely breaking down, and moving on to then retest the next sort of prior low in the price action at $100.8 thousand. That is going to signal a change of character. So that's our first change of character, and that Bitcoin is printing lower highs and lower lows on the price action. So a reversion into a short time frame downtrend, right? So watch for this 100K. That's that sort of level that we really want to maintain on the daily time frame. And just below that, we've got the 50 EMA as a dynamic level of support. And if we end up losing $100,000 on the short time frame and retracing down, the next available levels of support are the range low for our recent short time frame uptrend, with confluence at the 200 EMA as well. Zooming into the 15-minute chart as well, we can see the trigger for the move downwards on the short time frame. We have a very small level of support over here at 102.5 thousand. We can see 2 retests or 3 retests of that level of support now. And if this next 15-minute candle closes, or any 15-minute candle closes below that, that's our sort of short time frame trigger for a movement to first retest the trend line, and then below that, sort of those lower level support that I just mentioned. Now, what we can also see here is that we have a lot of little liquidity levels of support sitting just below $100,000. So all that is going to facilitate a bounce from 100K, as well as sort of sentimental, or the sentiment buying that happens at $100,000, or those big round numbers at 50K, 100K, 105, blah, blah, blah. So we have those levels of support, and we can see that it really does not want to go down. We're seeing a lot of bullish absorption right now, but the moment sort of we continue or start to print lower lows on the price action, that bullish absorption is no longer happening, right? And we're flipping into the downtrend that's going to sort of result in a retest of these levels of support. The uptrend, 101.3 and $100,000. Wrapping up the Bitcoin analysis and going over to take a look at the rest of the cryptocurrency market, we can see that Bitcoin is not the only thing that is currently retesting a massive level of resistance. So taking a look here on the total 3 chart, or the altcoin market cap chart, we can see that across 2025, we were printing these sort of lower highs and lower lows on the price action. And very recently, upon breaking above $790 billion here on total 3, we established our most crucial level of support here on the high time frame, and that support establishment has led to a rally and retest of this next prior high, sitting from 830 billion to $877 billion. That is our current level of resistance. So there is a possibility that we see a market-wide rejection for the time being on the short time frame. And what we're looking for total 3 in the potential little correction here is a sustenance above this level of support, right? This blue box that we're seeing, ranging from $782 billion to $808 billion, right? And if we take a look at the 250 EMA as well, we can see both those trend lines converging, representing and sort of confirming that it is a really crucial level of support for total 3 and a bullish validator, right? So in this correction, if we manage to bounce from those levels, that is a great entry point and a great sort of validation of the continuation of a bullish narrative for total 3 in the altcoin market cap. And if we push above the top of this liquidity zone here at 870 billion, we're here at 180 billion. We're very likely to see a continued movement to retest these prior highs in that 2025 downtrend, taking us to 930 and 950 billion dollars as the next target. Alrighty guys, that is a wrap on the analysis for today. Thank you for tuning in for another episode. If you enjoyed the video or you learned something, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel to get regular Bitcoin analysis every Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. And join my free Telegram for more regular Bitcoin updates. If you're interested in my VIP trading channel, don't forget to message me down below on Telegram. VIP gives you exclusive access to my personal trading setup, so the exact entry points, targets, and stop losses. Hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!